On today's show, the San Diego Padres make their first big move, as they always do at the deadline, in acquiring star closer Mason Miller from the A's, and it's a polarizing move, to say the least.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Padres podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for Thursday, deadline day, July 31st. As always, I'm your host with sometimes the most, Javier Reyes, and I've been covering this team for almost 6 years now, not just for just this podcast, but also various other outlets, including JustBaseball.com, chief among them. Today's episode, guys, is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy Transfusion. Go to 5hourenergy.com today and use my promo code LOCKEDONGOLF to receive 20% off your order. Only valid through September 30th. Order transfusion flavored 5 Hour Energy shots today. And today's, guys, episode, let me tell you, you gotta go check that 5 Hour out. You can also check me out on Twitter/X and Blue Sky at Javipeno, JAVIIPENO. Any questions, comments, or concerns that you might have, and I imagine there will be many of them following what was a crazy move by Mr. AJ Preller, trading for Mr. Mason Miller of the Vegas, Sacramento, formerly Oakland, whatever you want to call them, A's. We're going to be talking about that a lot today. We're going to be talking about the good and the bad, and talking about what the Padres still have left to do. At the time of this recording, it is 2 p.m. That was the earliest I could get to finally record and react to this stuff, so just letting you guys know, I do have my Twitter open just in case something else breaks, but that is what we are covering today, so let's get to it. Firstly, the full trade as reported by Jeff Passan in full. The Padres received closer Mason Miller and left-handed pitcher J.P. Sears, while the A's received Leody DeVries, Brennan Nett, Henry Baez, and Darniel Nunez. Who actually, like you guys saw a few months ago, or not a few months ago, a couple weeks ago, he's made a couple appearances for the Padres. So, first reaction to this. There's a lot to go through on this, I think. You know what I mean? Like we talked about yesterday, when you hear AJ Preller interested in someone, right? We talked about this last night. That tends to stay, right? And it actually reminds me a little bit of the Josh Hader situation, where Josh Hader started becoming a popular name that he was interested in like 2020 and whatnot, and then it happened years later. They of course did the 2022 deadline, right? Boom. So that this follows the trend from what we've seen with this team and what they usually do. It's nice that they got J.P. Sears in this. Remember, the Padres have actually been in need of a little bit of a left-handed pitcher. He's not particularly amazing, but it wouldn't surprise me if they know what they're doing and they're saying, you know what, we need an extra guy to throw in there. Maybe this means Dylan Cease is absolutely getting traded just to get another guy in there. Maybe he becomes this year's Martin Perez, a guy that's just going to help you get over the finish line and just be okay and fill up innings and whatnot, right? And you get a superstar closer, right? My first reaction, though, is not positive, and I think that most people are not positive on this deal initially because of what they gave up, right? This is way too much, no matter what it is, usually for a reliever. The only time that something like this makes sense, I'm thinking like Chicago Cubs, best team in baseball, clearly at one point, and they had a surplus of prospects, and they said, we'll trade one of them in order to get Aroldis Chapman, right? And then he ends up being big for them, helping them win their first World Series in 100 years. The Padres don't have a super deep farm. It was very top-heavy, with Leody DeVries and Ethan Salas being the top guys for it, obviously, right? And my other thing is, it's also way too much for a reliever when you don't particularly need a reliever right now. The Padres have the best bullpen in baseball, with the four horsemen especially leading it, and some decent guys like Daniel Morgan and Wandy Peralta, and hopefully maybe Yuki Matsui gets better, right? You get my point. Okay, and by the way, speaking of David Morgan, this is also a team that's shown a real good stretch lately for a while now of churning out good bullpen arms. So this isn't necessarily, can you get someone as good as Mason Miller? Not necessarily, but this is still a team that bullpen has not really been the issue for them for a long time, right? At least for the majority of it, And this also plays into why I'm a little bit down on it, is that I mentioned this last night. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over, when in reality, this is a team that under AJ Preller has had 2 really solid playoff runs. I know they made 2020, but it was a shortened season. They've made 2 solid playoff runs in 11 years, one of which was a good run, right? The Soto run over the Dodgers and the Mets. But let's be honest, that's just playoff baseball stuff. You could chalk up to that, right? It was a great run, but that team just showed up at the right time in the postseason. Then you had last year, which was genuinely a great team, and in my opinion, heading into the postseason, all things considered, the best team in baseball at that point. And of course, they choked against the Dodgers in games 4 and 5. The other part about this is Leody Taveras. He's not just the top Padres prospect. He's also a top 10, and for some top 5, I've seen as high as 3. Shout out my guy Aram Layton of JustBaseball.com. Go check out his write-up. In all of baseball. And like I said, as mentioned yesterday, it's not like the Padres have seen consistent success with dumping their farm. We still talk about the Soto trade to this day. And even aside from that one, forget that James Wood and CJ Abrams and maybe even Jarlin Susana and especially Mackenzie Gore have turned out well. It's more about you give up a lot of assets and not necessarily are you getting consistent wins. This isn't the Atlanta Braves, right? A team like the Atlanta Braves is usually one that goes out and is consistently great every year. I know that they're bad right now, but stick with me, right? And I understand that part of that is also because the Dodgers are in the division. But overall, you haven't seen super consistent success given the amount of players you've traded over the years, right? Go look it up. You can find it on Twitter and whatnot. People are posting it all over, the amount of great players that the Padres have traded, right? And also mentioned yesterday, the Padres are very radical with their prospects, right? So unless you think they're ready now, they don't care, right? Like that just tends to happen. So I'm not surprised that they moved DeVries necessarily. I'm actually not. I'm really never surprised by anything AJ Preller does, for good and for bad, and in my opinion, usually good. I think it's fun that we have a GM in this sport, and frankly, it is still a very good player that they acquired, right? But he's also just 18 years old. You're giving up a lot of potentially special Jackson Merrill tier prospect for a reliever, right? And relievers are good to have, right? They've been the reason the Padres have been so good. And yes, that makes the bullpen even more disturbingly good than it already was. But overall, I'm still looking at a team that has other issues. And if you use your big trade chip on a guy like this, does that make sense when you have the worst left field tandem in baseball? Or at least one of the 3 worst, right, at best, or when you have easily the worst catching tandem in baseball. And don't get me wrong, Mason Miller's very good. 2.82 expected ERA. He's had an expected ERA of no less than 3.8 in his 3 years. He's young at 26. That's all great. But was it the right one to go for? And I understand that's why people are upset with AJ Preller, and you could have potentially seen him in the future. You could have seen that this was a guy that they'd use. Maybe you put him at second base or something like that. So it's really, really distressing. However, there is a positive spin on this the more you think about it. And we're going to talk about that, guys, in just a second. But first, a word from one of our sponsors. And that sponsor is one that I'm going to need as I recover and recap all these, trade deadline moves, guys. But it's time to fuel up and turn it up with 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. It brings the bold grape, ginger, and thyme flavor of your favorite golf drink, minus the alcohol, into a quick, energizing shot. Whether you're sinking birdies or just making memories with friends, this one's a hole-in-one for your energy game. And let's be honest, some days on the course or off it, you just need that extra boost to stay sharp and organized. It's great. Golf is all about good times and good people and good flavors. Of course, the grape, ginger lime flavor gives you the best parts of your clubhouse go to without chasing down the beverage cart. It's really great, guys. And also, just in general, regardless of golf, it's great, but we're going to keep it in that context. If you go to 5hourenergy.com today, that is the number 5, hourenergy.com, you can use my promo code LOCKEDONGOLF to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th, so be sure to get on it. And one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription offers as well. Whether you're meeting up with friends or trying to turn 18 holes into 36, get the energizing boost you need to power through. Order transfusion flavored 5-Hour Energy shots today. And just like that, everybody, we are back here thriving and vibing into the second segment of the show, in which we are going to attempt to talk about the positive of the Mason Miller side of things, and instead not freak out. Oh, AJ Preller, he's given up the farm again. Leody Taveras, he's the next Lindor, whatever. Let's talk a little bit of the positive thing. And also, remember, you can follow me on Twitter/X and Blue Sky at Javipeno, JAVIIPENO. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of this as well. Let's talk about the positives, because there are plenty. Like genuinely plenty. Of what's it called of positives for this move. Let's talk about it from that perspective really quickly. Mason Miller, number one, is a stud. Like I said, expected ERA of 3.18 or lower every year. He gets you a lot of strikeouts. He's a very, very good pitcher. One of the best relievers in all of baseball. This is not just a random guy, and he's carrying an astonishingly good strikeout rate of 39.1%. And last year it was 41.8%. So we're looking at like another Josh Hader, but without hopefully the baggage and whatnot, and all the other, extenuating circumstances that led that whole situation, transpired, right? But moving on. The other thing about Mason Miller is that it makes the Padres bullpen a complete Justice League. We've been talking a lot lately about how Randy Vasquez, Ryan Berger, Dylan Cease, even occasionally, even when he was healthy, Michael King, and Yu Darvish and all these guys, that maybe they can't always go super deep into a game. Now you create a situation where, at worst, you can enter a playoff game with a one-run lead, and you can throw Mason Miller, you can throw Jeremiah Estrada, you can throw Adrian Monajon, and you can throw Jason Adam, and then you can throw Robert Suarez. That's crazy, and one of the closest I've seen a team get to that crazy World Series winning Royals bullpen in a long time for you to add a guy like this. That is actually genuinely ridiculous. And it also means, even if you don't go that route, say a pitcher goes 7 innings, you could just pick which great guy you have. And none of these guys are rentals except for maybe Suarez, depending on, how they feel about him next year and the mutual contract and all that sort of stuff. But you've got Jason Adam next year. You've got Mason Miller under control until 2029. You've got Adrian Monajon under control from not just the year, but also next year as well. And Jeremiah Estrada, he ain't even an ARB like 2 yet, right? So you have a lot of control here, which is good. It's not quite last year where, Tanner Scott was just for the rest of that season, right? So that's the positive there, is that it's a truly Avengers Justice League Straw Hat Pirates bullpen, right? The next thing is DeVries is a shortstop, and they already have one in Xander Bogaerts. Whether we like it or not, he has been playing well, though, right? We talked about this on yesterday's show. He has been playing a lot better lately. 790 OPS in each of the 2 last months. That's great. And I'm not saying that I support that line of thinking, that just because you have a shortstop means you should give up your shortstop prospect. But, like I said, that's the other thing, is you could always test him other places, like you did with Jackson Merrill, right? Like you could move him to center field, you could move to left field, maybe, who knows? Or a slightly easier test, maybe you move him back to second base and put Jay Cronenworth back to first. But whatever, moving on. Miller can also, as mentioned by Sammy Miller and a bunch of other people, Mason Miller first originally came up as a starting pitcher. And what have we seen a little bit of a trend in baseball? That it has actually worked quite well for teams that are looking at certain relievers and saying, we can actually make you a pretty good starter. If that's the case, giving up a Leody DeVries type prospect makes infinitely more sense. That you're going to just basically have an Avengers bullpen for the rest of this year, and then you head into next year with, okay, this is a potential starter. And that makes a lot more sense, considering that Yu Darvish is getting older. Joe Musgrove will be coming off of TJ. Nick Pivetta going to cost a little bit more, so maybe that hampers them in free agency and whatnot. And then you've still got Michael King and Dylan Cease as free agents, right? So all of a sudden you're like, okay, Mason Miller, Nick Pivetta, and Joe Musgrove, and Yu Darvish. Okay, that it's looking a little bit less daunting of an issue as it was before, assuming that's the route they go. And again, even if they don't, he's still just an electric bullpen arm and is going to be great for hopefully a playoff run this year. Right? And also, lastly, the positive is simple as this. The Padres over and over have shown an uncanny ability to be Wolverine. As I showed in my shirt on Tuesday's show, everybody go check that out, in-studio show I did with Karthik Venkataraman, which is CBS 8 Studios sports anchor. It's just really funny because basically nothing that we said has come true in terms of predictions and whatnot, but a lot of good stuff in there. And I was wearing a Wolverine shirt. That's why I bring it up. But, AJ Preller's been amazing at regenerating this farm. Probably bar none, frankly, the best scout in Major League Baseball. Because I don't know how many times I've been doing this show that they have a top 5, top 10 prospect that's available at the deadline. It happens every year. So AJ Preller might be like, I like some of the guys on our farm system, and I think that they're going to graduate and they're going to be regarded higher as we get to next year. I still remember, nobody thought after the Soto trade they'd still have guys to give. They gave up Robbie Stelling and Dylan Lesko last year. They're top pitching prospects, and they still had stuff left over. So that's what I'm saying. What I'm saying is it's totally possible that we look at it from that perspective and say Preller will find more guys. He knows what he's doing, and I totally am fine with that. I really am. I think it's totally a good thing to go with. But we're also going to have to see what they do for the rest of the deadline. At the time of this recording, it's 2:24 Eastern time for me. Like, we have not seen anything yet. But that is going to be the next question, right? And also, another part of this, I've seen some people saying Robert Suarez can now be traded because of this. I wouldn't do that. I'd rather just have a beast mode bullpen for the rest of this year, right? I'd much rather do that because I don't know what Robert Suarez is going to get you. I don't think he's... If you're going to get just an average left fielder, then I'd rather not trade him. Same thing goes for Dylan Cease, who starters don't grow on trees, right? And apparently starters are extremely expensive. Maybe that's why you've seen him in rumors. That guys like Mackenzie Gore, guys like Joe Ryan, guys like Andrew Heaney, guys like... That was a weird one to follow up with those two, but it seems like starting pitcher asking price has been through the roof. So maybe Preller's trying to leverage that and say, yeah, it's only half a season, but how else are y'all going to get another starter, right? Go through me. Maybe he gets what they need with outfield and catcher, right? AJ Preller, I'm pro. AJ Preller I am. And I'm not just pro because he's fun for baseball or that he's fun for the trade deadline. He's been great for the Padres and is part of the reason why, because of how exciting they are, this has become a culture now. This has become a genuine team, a team with an identity. And why, when you go to Tuesday night games against the Rays, that they'll be sold out potentially, right? Leading attendance in the top 3 or 4 the past 5 years. So I'm still super grateful for AJ Preller. But it's also true that part of me wonders, could you have just gotten an okay reliever? And could you have just gotten a better left fielder? Would you have rather traded Leody DeVries for a better position player? That is worth pointing out. But that is my big thing. If Mason Miller is converted into a starter, this makes a lot more sense. And you might be saying, well, Javi, it's just because it worked before, it won't work again. Hey, the Padres are the first ones that did that with Seth Lugo, and I was there. A lot of people laughed. And guess what? Seth Lugo was nearly a Cy Young guy. It was amazing for the Royals. It is still amazing for the Royals. And Clay Holmes, another example, this year, a great, great starter. Although, of course, the Padres beat his butt. But nonetheless, that is what we're looking at. So that's my opinion. I'd love to know your guys' comments and thoughts. Leave them in the below YouTube or reach out to me on Twitter/X, again, and Blue Sky at Javapeno. I actually just see AJ Casfeld tweet, Preller last year. One thing we've never been scared of is we're going to trade players. We're going to trade players that show up in the big leagues. If we get what we're looking to do and it works for both us this year and over the next 3 to 5 years, we're content with that. I.e., AJ Preller is a sociopath when it comes to specifically trades. My man don't care. He is not afraid of the moment. We'll have to see, though, guys. But after this break, we're going to talk about left field. That's the big question. And the latest rumors in that regard, and maybe a little bonus thoughts for you lovely chickadees and good muscular folks and gremlins out there listening to this podcast. It's just a second, but first, a word from one of our sponsors. And just like that, everybody, we are back thriving and vibing into the final segment of this here show. We are still not seeing anything in terms of what the Padres are going to do, right? Everybody's been tweeting, though, like, it's not over, look out, right? Like, they are not going to be done here. And frankly, I would be very shocked if they were done here. Do I think it's going to be a big name? Not necessarily, but I would be shocked if the Padres were like, all we did was buff our bullpen and not address the things that are actually killing us, which is the 7 through 9 part of the order, particularly left field and catcher. I understand Bryce Johnson's been playing okay for them, but you get my point, right? Let's talk about left field. So, what we've seen, according to Mark Feinsand, another popular guy that we've seen is Luis Robert. And apparently, according to him, Luis Robert is unlikely to be traded, right? So that's immediately the really sexy option is gone off the table. If Mark Feinsand is correct, these things change. I'm not saying this is gospel. And again, by the time you guys are listening to this, Luis Robert could be a Padre. I'm not saying he won't be. But that is another player off the board. Then you also saw Harrison Bader, who we've been talking about a lot. He just got sent to Philly for a few prospects, including a pitcher and an outfield prospect, if I'm not mistaken. Not too much that they had to give up. They didn't have to give up their top prospect like Andrew Painter. And my thing is that completes left field all of a sudden. You have one of the better outfields in all of baseball. So that's a little bit of a problem. Is it possible that the Padres are going for Ramon Laureano? He's been in the news a lot. Right? And if you're wondering about Stephen Kwan, Dennis Lin is reporting from The Athletic that the Guardians asked for Leody DeVries in return. So that tells me he ain't on the board, and Preller said, no, I would rather trade my guy for someone that I know is going to be great for this year in the bullpen, and I'm going to convert into a starting pitcher next year. It solves two things. You get like two benefits from him. At least that's what I'm thinking he's thinking, right? Even though I really like Stephen Kwan, I like him better than Jarren Duran, who, by the way, shockingly light amount of attention from Jarren Duran, right? Like, we haven't really heard anything all day, at least on Twitter and all the boards and all the reporters. We haven't really heard anything, and I think that that's just really funny. That, of course, just classic, right? That's classic. I think that the other part of this, though, is not only that, but I'm wondering if the Padres aren't just going for some lower tier player. Ramon Laureano, he was great at one point. Maybe Preller sees something. And hey, look, I'm not going to fault the guy for seeing something, especially with Gavin Sheets having a good season. And speaking of which, Gavin Sheets, is it possible that they are going to potentially go for Marcell Ozuna? You put him at DH, and then you keep Gavin Sheets in left field, and then occasionally when you feel like that lefty split, right, he's not as good at hitting lefties. He's been better this year. He's got about a 90 WRC plus against them, career of 50. So he's been not a liability against lefties. Not good, not a positive, but not a liability. And then you say, Sheets, he hasn't been as good. Maybe the Padres are like, we think the first half was just like a fun mirage. We would like to just use him as a spot starter, left fielder, when it is a righty. And maybe when it's a lefty, they put in Bryce Johnson. Not the worst I've seen in the world. He's played a little bit better in left field, but again, the defense isn't very good. But I wouldn't hate that, especially if you get Marcell Ozuna, who would be a great DH, right? Like, this is a veteran. He's a great player. I also talked about him on Tuesday a little bit, and he hits bombs, and the Padres need some power, especially with the lack of power from some other guys like Jackson Merrill, Fernando Tatis Jr., et cetera, right? So, wouldn't hate that. And again, the last thing I want to emphasize is I wouldn't trade Suarez, and I'm not wild about moving Cease. Although I do concede that the latter, it wouldn't be, he's been atrocious, and I wouldn't hate it as much, right? I just wouldn't hate that. So we'll have to see, guys. We're going to have to see. This is going to be a lot of fun. It's already been a lot of fun. My first reaction was disappointment, was frustration with this move. I've been on the record many times that I think that we have enough star players, and you don't always have to make the splashy move, but it is also fun. Right? It makes you feel alive. It is really fun that we have this culture of a guy who just keeps finding prospects and finding ways to make big moves. I'm just hoping he didn't and I mean, AJ Preller is a smart guy, so it's possible. Again, let's keep in mind his ability to replenish the farm, right? I won't be shocked if Ethan Salas rises by the end of next year. I'm just not going to. I'm done being surprised by how the Padres prospects are viewed by people. I still remember when Robert Hassel, everyone was like, what are they doing? I remember when people were like, what are they doing with Jackson Merrill? I understand that the former of those two ended up being a little bit of a bust, but he was regarded very highly. So is someone like Cobb Hightower going to go up, right? Is someone like Cash Mayfield or even Schoolcraft, are they going to start being viewed a lot higher, right? Is someone like Bradley Rodriguez going to be viewed a lot higher as time goes along? It could happen. Boston Bateman, another one. We'll have to see, right? We'll have to see. But I must emphasize with people, we got to see how it all shakes out. And at the very minimum, that bullpen going to be lights out, man. That bullpen is about to be crazy. Hopefully it's enough for them to really go for it. They're still going for it, though. Confirmed. This is not the 2023 deadline where they just dip their toes in. This is more of the 2024 deadline. And dare I say, even more extreme. Because you gave up a top prospect in baseball. So we'll have to see how that goes. In terms of other things, though, I want to react to a question that I got from over the weekend really quickly from my guy, Rama Murdy, who always writes in. So I wanted to listen to him and answer his question. And here it is. He says, hi, Javier. Question for Monday's show. Yes, it is now Thursday, but got a little busy. How is the trip to San Diego going? Is Comic-Con a must-attend event for those of us who love Star Wars and Star Trek and other science fiction stories? Should Jose Iglesias get regular playing time after what he has shown on the road trip? Which team behind us worries you the most? Is it time to give some love to Xander? Enjoy the game. Go Padres. First of all, you are a madman for asking me like 20 different questions, my guy. Absolute lunatic madman. But I love you. You're awesome. Let's start first with Jose Iglesias. I think that if the Padres are going to be better in the second half, one part about this trade deadline is maybe Preller addressing this issue tells me he has faith that the rest of the Padres are going to get better. Maybe he thinks Jose Iglesias is not going to be quite as bad as he's been for the majority of this stretch, right? Of the season, I should say. It's totally possible. Like, genuinely possible, right? And I would not be against that belief. I would not look at this and say, wow, AJ Preller is a buffoon and expecting this offense to get better is crazy. He might be saying, Tatis is going to get a lot better. I believe in the metrics. I believe in the talent. He's going to be awesome, right? Like, he's going to be fantastic, and he's going to be that star player in the second half. We still have Manny Machado. And also, We still have the hope that Jackson Merrill's going to figure it out. We can hope that Jake Cronenworth is also going to keep it up. Gavin Sheets has been great. Xander Bogaerts has been even more exciting lately. Maybe Luis Arraez. Maybe Preller is more optimistic about the offense than we are. That would explain things. Jose Iglesias, I don't think so. His OPS in July is still just 616. He had a 456 last month, 472 the week before that. He's just a replacement level player who can occasionally make some flashy plays at second base defensively, and he's got a little bit of speed every now and then. But no, he's just a bench player, so I wouldn't be freaking out about him. And then which team behind us worries us the most? Well, that's a great question, especially if it has something to do with the trade deadline, because to me, well, now we don't have to worry about the D-backs because the D-backs are selling. And for those who also didn't hear, they traded Eugenio Suarez, possibly the biggest move at the deadline so far overall. We'll have to see. But in terms of the wild card standings, I will say that there aren't too many teams that are terrifying me. The Marlins have been on a run, right? But the Giants seem to be selling. The Cardinals are probably going to sell. They just sold Ryan Helsley. So the other team would be the Cincinnati Reds, right? The Cincinnati Reds are kind of the only team here that could potentially swoop in and take that spot. And we have a 3-game lead on them, right? And not to mention the Dodgers have been faltering a little bit. It's only a 3-game lead for them. So can they be better than just the Reds? I have confidence that they can be. I think they're a more well-rounded team than the Reds. But man, let me tell you, if they aren't, that'll be disappointing. But Preller certainly thinks that they're going to be in the postseason. So we'll have to see. Next part of your question, though, let me see here. Is it time to give some love to Xander? Yes, and I have been for the past 2 shows. So I answered this question before I even answered it. Hold on. I answered it before even reading it on the show. Does that make sense? And then lastly, you mentioned, is Comic-Con a must-attend event for those of us who love Star Wars and Star Trek and other science fiction stories? Abso-freaking-lutely, man. Absolutely. I had a blast, and it's always fun seeing, like, the independent creators and what they got. Like, I got, like, a Gengar little figure, but he's painted as Venom. I got, like, an exclusive poster. I got these pins. I got some really cool art, like, all sort of stuff. And for the Padres fans, I got an exclusive thing that's going to be in the set, by the way. I promise you. You guys are going to see this on the set. I'll find a way, right? Of Tatis in his City Connect, a figure swinging. The problem is that it was actually a pre-order, so it is going to be here, but it was a Comic-Con exclusive. But yes, everyone who loves all the nerd stuff, go all in. And for those who don't know, and I don't know how you wouldn't by just looking at the set on YouTube, I am very nerdy, so I very much enjoy all this type of stuff. But guys, that's it for today's show. Look, at the very minimum, this is exciting. At the very minimum. And we tend to freak out at a lot of AJ Preller trades. And then it turns out that usually most of the time they are okay, right? But we will see. We will see, guys. I know that, last question, last point. Would I have rather traded Leota DeVries for Steven Kwan? If they are planning to use Mason Miller as a starter next year, I think I'm indifferent. If they aren't, then yes, I would have rather used him on Steven Kwan. That would be my last thing that I'm going to leave you guys because we're going to have more things to talk about tomorrow. And I don't want to just spend all my energy on just this one move because they ain't making just one move. So we'll have to see what it is. But until that next time, stay safe and, of course, stay faithful. My Fire Faithful homies, take care.